Thank you for your invitation to speak to the Korean Global Forum for Peace. I will focus on macro history and the long-term future. Most people live day to day. Time is short. They're unable to think about the future, certainly unable to use the future to change today. Futurists, on the other hand, think of the long term. They look at novelty, disruptions, outliers, black swans. Macro historians are neither day-to-day nor their long-term future. Macro historians think of the deep patterns of change and use them to rethink tomorrow and today. Macro historians focus on multiple shapes of time and space. In my work with Johan Galtung, my book on PR Sarkar, and the book on the future of Asia, Asia 2038, we explore different patterns of change. Pattern number one is the cyclical. This derives from the work of Ibn Khaldun. He asked, why do civilizations decline? His conclusion was they decline because there's a degeneration of power over 3 to 4 generations. There's a founder. That person invents the new dynasty, organization, country. Around the founder are the companions. They watch, they take notes, they write. Generation 3 just have the text. Generation 4 have forgotten. They're no longer creating, they're imitating. So we see a natural decline over generations. And then the Bedouins come in. They challenge power. They challenge the control of political, economic, cultural power. At this stage, the Bedouins, of course, become just like the dynasty they overthrew. Power also declines for them. So that's the first pattern, cyclical decline. Pattern number 2 is the linear rise. We've seen this in Europe, Western civilization. An image of progress, participatory democracy, meritocracy, science and technology, global education, global health. Every generation does better. Auguste Comte, Herbert Spencer, going from religion to reason to science. So the linear starts to talk about the future is going to be better than today. Of course, the weakness of this, those at the top imagine themselves to be better than those behind. The third imagination, the pattern, is the pendulum. It's from Petram Sorkin. Systems, civilizations, organizations go from extreme one pendulum to the other. Overly centralized, they go decentralized. Fragmented, integrated. Religious, modernity. Now, why does this happen? When systems find success, they reinforce the success. The evidence they look for, the strategies they implement, keep on focused on the system they've created. So more centralization, more fragmentation, more just my tribe. And of course, since reality is more complex than one particular future, the other dimensions of what's possible come into play, and there's a pendulum shift. The fourth imagination, the fourth pattern, is the spiral. This is from PR Sarkar. He argued there are cycles. In epistemic theory, in knowledge, there's a cycle of the worker's way of seeing the world, the warrior, the intellectual, the capitalist. At the end of the capitalist era, you get a transition. The workers come in and the warriors take over. The cycle continues. But must it continue? Sarkar says no. This is where you have leadership. He calls it Sadvipra leadership. Individuals who protect, work, innovate, and create new forms of value. They ensure the cycle becomes a spiral. They understand the pattern of history and they understand linearity. So they create the new future. For Arnold Toynbee, this was the creative minority. Every civilization reaches a point where it can go no further. There's contradictions. How do you get over those contradictions? This becomes our next issue. We have patterns, and we have contradictions. The contradictions get resolved through agency. Agency is us making a difference. What are some of those notions of agency? Agency number 1 is You and I change. We meditate. We're mindful. We go on a spiritual path. We resolve our inner contradictions between greed and equanimity of mind. Agency number 2 is this leading edge. Sarkar Sadvipras, Toynbee's creative minority. They unite, they have a different vision of the future, they challenge the current system, and they're successful in creating a new system. Agency number 3 is, of course, understanding these patterns. You understand the patterns, and thus you can intervene better. So agency becomes a way out of these contradictions. Now, if we go further, there's, of course, artificial intelligence. From animals to humans to AI. That becomes part of our agency. They come in and they do things better. They help us create a better future. But will this be enough? If we go even longer term, the next 100, 1,000, 10,000 years. There's a 5th macro historian, Nikolai Kardashev. He says, see the future not just from the perspectives of philosophers, social scientists, but from theoretical physics. His question is, why has there been no first contact? His conclusion is, because the contradictions we face are faced by intelligence all over the cosmos. He calls them type 0 civilizations, in contradiction between governance, tribal, nation-state or religious-oriented, without clear global rules, for example, with the WHO unable to implement, and energy sources, in our case, nuclear and fossil fuel. This contradiction destroys civilizations. What's the solution? Move to a type 1 civilization. Integrated, global, regional governance based on science and technology. And even spiritual science and technology if you want to challenge that paradigm. So type 1 civilization uses solar with integrated governance, and then we start to leave the planet. That's a 100-year process. That moves to a type 2 civilization, which takes 1,000 years. We're then using energy throughout the solar system, and we're united as one planet. You might say the Star Trek vision of the future. This leads to a type 3 civilization, which takes 10,000 years. It's virtual, it's spiritual. It's not focused on the day-to-day needs. It's evolved beyond that. So for Kardashev, this becomes the agency to focus on governance and focus on safer energy. For Sarkar, it's understanding the cyclical pattern, becoming Sadvipras, and creating the new spiral where every generation gets better. For Toynbee, it's seeing the limits of the linear and developing a creative minority. For Ibn Khaldun, it's understanding the patterns of cyclical decline and starting to create a better civilization. So this takes us to today. What do we need to do? We have challenges. Challenge number 1 is tradition based on masculinities towards gender equity, gender cooperation. A bird needs 2 wings to fly. Contradiction number 2, a world organized by nation states, when in fact our reality is post-nation states, individuals, corporations, the environment, NGOs, communities. We have many ways to organize reality. How do we move towards multiple sovereignties based on a global governance design? We see the pandemic doesn't care about nation states. Contradiction number 3 is, how do we give voice to the new creative minority? And how do we ensure they continue to lead when there's a pendulum revenge back, a revenge of the past? They're leading, but of course the pendulum is forcing a way back. How do we integrate that? The cut at the leading edge with the push backwards. So these are some of the contradictions we face. Now, what then are the ways forward? The drivers. Clearly, 1 is technology. How do we use it wisely? 2 is cultural and spiritual change. 3 is new governance design. 4th, of course, is these cultural creatives, imagining a new future. Certainly for me, it's all 4. If we put these 4 together and understand these contradictions, we're reaching the limits of what we can manage as a species, then we have to start to imagine ourselves as a different type of planet. Going from a single bottom line, just GDP, to a quadruple bottom line. Planet, meaning nature, prosperity, wealth for all. People, inclusion. And of course, purpose, spirit. All those are crucial for us. They set up our new KPR, our new metrics as we go forward. It's changing the old story, just me, my tribe, my nation, my religion, to a new story. We're going on a cosmic caravan, ensuring there's far more wealth flow, enhanced design, and a far better future for all. Macro history is one of the tools that can help us rethink our present and rethink our future. Thank you very much.